12 red flags about her sexual past you should never ignore. You like her. She's attractive, but something in your gut feels off. The stories she tells, the way she downplays her past, it's not adding up. This isn't about puritanical judgment or shaming. We're talking about psychological patterns and behavioral footprints, the kind her past quietly leaves behind. Most guys miss these red flags until they're deep in regret, but not you. Not after this. Watch closely, because the last one, that's the red flag even experienced men overlook, and it changes how you see everything. 1. She's always had more stories than lessons. When she opens up about her sexual past, if she ever does, pay attention to the pattern, not just the details. If her stories are always about wild adventures, drama-fueled nights, or taboo flings but never include what she learned from them, that's a red flag. We all have a past, but if she treats hers like a highlight reel instead of a history of decisions with consequences, she may not be reflecting deeply. And if there's no reflection, there's probably no growth. This isn't about how many. It's about how she frames her past. Is she revisiting memories or reliving them? 2. She jokes too easily about things most people outgrow. Humor can be revealing, especially when it's used to mask unresolved habits. If she's constantly making light of behavior most people mature out of, sneaking out after hookups, ghosting guys she slept with, laughing about threesomes like she's still in college, it might not be nostalgia. It might be muscle memory. Some women cling to that identity because it's tied to a time when they felt most desired, most powerful, or most in control. But if she still lives emotionally in that space, how much has actually changed? 3. She's had multiple first-time conversations with exes. Here's one to listen for carefully. If she's had multiple first-time milestones, the first guy she ever loved, the first guy who broke her, the first guy she really trusted, the first one she opened up to, and you're hearing that story over and over with different names, that's not sentimentality. That's emotional inflation. She keeps redefining her emotional starting line, and that might be her way of rebooting her romantic history every time things go south. But those resets leave debris. If she's been new with too many people, she may not know how to sustain anything long enough to become deep. If you're focused on becoming the kind of man who doesn't settle, type standards below. I want to see who's raising the bar. 4. She's quick to label things toxic, but was still drawn to them. If she frequently describes her past flings or relationships as toxic, chaotic, or just physical, yet her tone is almost fond, or even defensive, she might still be addicted to that emotional roller coaster. Don't just hear the word toxic and nod. Ask yourself, is she justifying chaos because it gave her intensity? Sometimes people confuse heat with depth. If she chased chaos in the past and still seems intrigued by it, you might be her next adrenaline hit, not her safe space. And safe in the long run is what holds. 5. She says her past doesn't define her, but refuses to talk about it. Everyone has things they'd rather not revisit. But if she completely shuts down when the topic of her past comes up, or brushes it off with a spiritual cliche like, "That's not who I am anymore," pay attention. Growth usually comes with context. If she's done the work, she should be able to talk about it. Not in detail, but in ownership. Avoidance isn't healing. Sometimes the silence isn't shame, it's strategy. And that means you're dealing with someone who's carefully curating what you're allowed to know. That's not vulnerability, that's control. 6. She talks about her freedom phase like it was mandatory. There's a specific kind of language you'll hear from women who went through an unfiltered phase of casual sex, and now try to retroactively make it sound noble. I was just finding myself. It was empowering. Or, everyone needs a phase like that. Do they? Or did she just need to rationalize choices that left her feeling empty? This doesn't mean anyone who experimented is damaged, not even close. But if she can't talk about that phase without turning it into a manifesto, she might still be clinging to the idea that it was necessary. Not because it was, but because without that justification, the regret is too loud to face. 7. Her body language shifts when certain names come up. You're not just listening to what she says, you're watching how she reacts. When a certain name comes up in conversation, a guy she casually mentions from the past, a friend she used to be involved with, or even someone you never heard of until now, her face changes. A hesitation, a flicker in her eyes, a micro shift in tone. These aren't accidents. People leave energetic fingerprints on each other. If someone from her past still has real estate in her nervous system, that's not just history. That's a ghost in the passenger seat. You're not dating her if she's still emotionally rented out to someone else. 8. She's proud of being unattached in every connection. Some people walk through intimacy like it's a hotel, never really unpacking, never really staying. If she brags about how she's never been clingy, doesn't get jealous, or can keep things light, listen closely. That might not be a strength. It might be emotional detachment, masquerading as confidence. A woman who's been through a string of surface-level sexual experiences without forming real bonds often becomes numb by necessity. That numbness gets repackaged as cool girl energy, but when things get real, you'll find out she doesn't know how to hold emotional weight. Just avoid it. Before we hit the next one, if you want to stay a few steps ahead in this game, subscribing now saves you from playing catch-up later. 9. She still has a type she won't admit to. Sometimes the most telling red flag isn't what she did, it's who she keeps choosing. If you hear recurring themes in the kind of men she's drawn to, emotionally unavailable creatives, chaotic alpha types, serial partiers, but she insists, that's not me anymore. Take pause. People don't magically shift desires just because the last guy hurt them. If she hasn't unpacked why she was attracted to that energy in the first place, she's likely still craving the same stimulus. She might want you as the safe bet, but miss them when things feel too calm. And if you don't cause friction, you might bore her. 10. Her stories lack female accountability. If every time she opens up about her past, the narrative is full of men who were players, liars, manipulators, or emotionally stunted, yet she was just a wide-eyed bystander, that's a red flag. Not about the men, but about her ability to self-reflect. Women who truly grow from their past don't just blame the characters. They study the script. They own their part in the pattern. If she never says things like, I ignored red flags, I stayed too long, or I wasn't ready either, then she's not healed. She's just edited the story to protect her ego. And a woman who can't critique her past self is usually still protecting her current one. 11. She romanticizes things that were clearly one-sided. Sometimes the biggest giveaway is how she talks about situations where she gave more than she got, and still describes them like they were magic. If she's reminiscing about that one summer with a guy who never really wanted anything serious, or the hookup who never even took her on a date, but she recalls it with longing, she wasn't just physically invested, she was emotionally stranded. When someone romanticizes one-sided dynamics, it's because they've confused emotional deprivation with depth. And if that's what her heart still equates with passion, you need to ask yourself, what will she crave when things are healthy? 12. Her idea of closure is silence, not conversation. How someone ends things matters just as much as how they begin. If she has a long trail of faded connections, ghosted lovers, or things that just fizzled, that's not just modern dating. That's a pattern of emotional evasion. A woman who never seeks clarity or closure might not have the tools or the courage to face uncomfortable truths. If she disappears when things get real, you can expect her to do it again, maybe to you. This kind of avoidance also means her past is likely littered with people who still feel unresolved about her, and people who leave ghosts behind usually haven't made peace with their own.